From the ashes of the Great War, a world was born where weary soldiers returned to cities ravaged by their footsteps. However, this was a thorny peace, and it carried within it the seeds of a greater storm to come. This is the unforgettable and bitter story of the Second World War, the most destructive conflict in human history. It all began with the seeds sown by signatures at the Palace of Versailles and an oath of vengeance. The year was 1919, and the victors were drawing the future fate of a defeated Germany in the magnificent halls of Paris. The signed Treaty of Versailles was more like a document of heavy humiliation than a peace text. The treaty's war guilt clause placed the entire responsibility for the war solely on Germany. Germany lost a significant part of its territory, and its army, a source of pride, was almost completely dismantled. Furthermore, humiliating military restrictions were imposed, such as the demilitarization of the Rhineland. It was also forced to bear the burden of enormous war reparations that it could not pay for generations. This ink was forever etched into the collective memory of the German people with great pain and anger. This anger would silently grow over the years and become one man's most terrible and powerful weapon. In his book My Struggle, Mein Kampf, written in prison after the failed beer hall putsch, Hitler had made his intentions clear. The post-war Weimar Republic was collapsing amidst hyperinflation and political instability. The vibrant Weimar culture of this period would later be branded as degenerate art by the Nazis. The 1920s and 30s had begun as an age of great political and economic uncertainty for all of Europe. While despair roamed the cities of Europe, long unemployment lines were opening deep wounds. In this environment of chaos, poisonous ideologies like fascism and Nazism found fertile ground for themselves. In Italy, Mussolini's black shirts were establishing a fascist order that placed the state above all else. Meanwhile, in Germany, Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist Party were storming onto the stage. Figures like Goering, Himmler, and Goebbels formed Hitler's innermost circle, which established the Nazi state. Immediately after coming to power as Chancellor in 1933, he began to crush his political opponents, using the Reichstag fire as a pretext. With the Enabling Act, he bypassed the parliament, effectively ending democracy in Germany. During the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, he ruthlessly murdered internal party rivals like Ernst Röhm. Nazism was not just a simple political movement, but the very manifestation of a racist hatred. With the Nuremberg laws enacted in 1935, the citizenship rights of Jews were stripped away, and racism was legalized. The Night of Broken Glass, Kristallnacht, in 1938 marked the beginning of violence against Jews. It was based on the myth of a superior Aryan race and anti-Semitism, which fueled centuries-old hatred towards Jews. There was also the policy of Lebensraum, or living space, which aimed for expansion eastward. Minister of Propaganda. Joseph Goebbels masterfully used the crackling sound of the radio and the magic of cinema. These dark ideas were carefully instilled in the minds of millions through modern mass communication tools. Leaders were depicted as saviors, while declared enemies were portrayed as monstrous, inhuman beings. And then, in 1929, a great economic earthquake starting from America shook the entire world to its core. While newspaper headlines screamed of the stock market crash, soup lines in the cities trampled upon dignity. This great despair struck already struggling Germany right in the heart, weakening it. The cries of hopelessness echoing in the streets had facilitated the rise of radical voices like Hitler. He vowed to the German people that he would restore their lost pride and the bread on their tables. While the world had its eyes fixed on this turmoil in Europe, another empire was rising on the other side of the planet. The ambitious gaze of Japan, industrialized but resource-poor, was turned towards the Asian mainland. The entry of Japanese soldiers into China's resource-rich Manchuria region in 1931 would be the first step of this policy. The Second Sino-Japanese War, which began in 1937, was a massive invasion that cost millions of lives. During this war, the Japanese army carried out one of the most horrific massacres in history in the city of Nanking. American volunteer pilots called the Flying Tigers fought for China before the USA entered the war. So why did the whole world remain so silent in the face of this unprecedented aggression? Because the League of Nations, established with great hopes to preserve peace, was nothing more than a paper tiger. It had no power to stop either Japan's invasion of Manchuria or Italy's invasion of Abyssinia in 1935. In 1935, Hitler once again violated Versailles by persuading Britain with the Anglo-German Naval Agreement. When he defied Versailles and remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, he was merely condemned. In the same year, Germany and Japan formed an alliance by signing the Anti-Comintern Pact against communism. This blatant ineffectiveness clearly showed leaders like Hitler how weak the international order was. The terrifying rehearsal for the war was taking place on the bloody soil of the Spanish Civil War, which began in 1936. Hitler's Condor Legion and Mussolini's Italy tested their new weapons by supporting General Franco. On the other side, the international brigades, which included intellectuals like George Orwell, fought for the Republicans. The brutal bombing of the city of Guernica by German planes was like a harbinger of the coming war. Britain and France pursued a policy of appeasement due to the trauma of World War I and pacifist public opinion. They turned a blind eye as Hitler tore up Versailles, expanded his army, and annexed Austria in 1938. In the same year, at the Munich Conference, they also allowed him to take the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. British Prime Minister Chamberlain had defended this agreement with the slogan, "Peace for our time." However, every step back taken in the name of preserving peace only whetted Hitler's appetite even more. In 1939, Germany and Italy formalized their military alliance with the Pact of Steel. And in the same year, Italy demonstrated its aggression once again by invading Albania. Hitler initiated the final crisis that brought Europe to the brink of war by demanding the Polish corridor and Danzig. In August 1939, the world was shocked by the non-aggression pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. This pact had a secret protocol, which was essentially a death warrant for Poland. The two totalitarian powers had secretly and treacherously agreed to divide Eastern Europe between themselves. Hitler no longer needed to watch his back, and the war machine was fully prepared. From that moment on, the fate of Europe and the world hung precariously by a thin cotton thread.